So you probably understand that the actual base of being able to speak a language well is obviously being able to understand a language well. I mean, after all, you're not going to be able to produce anything from your brain that's not already in there, right? So today we're going to talk about the 7 principles that if you understand and apply properly, you can understand any language. And some of these principles you may have heard before, but you won't have heard the spin on them that you're going to hear today. And some of these principles will be brand new to you. But my guarantee to you is that if you apply all 7 of these, you are going to get way better at understanding the language than you probably were in the past. So let's jump right into it. If you understand these 7 principles, you'll understand any language. Let's get into it like I just mentioned. 7 principles, whether you've never spoken a word or you've been stuck for years. So this video doesn't really care if you've been studying for a long time and want to make progress that you just have yet to see, or if you're just getting started and today is day 1 of this new language. You'll be ahead of lots of people if you apply these right from the get-go. So 0 to conversational Mandarin in 12 months after a decade of failing the old way. That's my own personal story. It took me about 12 months. Actually, it took me a little bit less, but to be honest, it took that first year for me to really understand. But once I did, I was able to make way more progress and get way further than I did after really a decade of trying other things with other languages. Okay. Each principle has a number. Each has an action that you can do tomorrow. To be very, very clear, the point of this video is to be actionable. So you can walk away with things that you can apply to your language learning routine basically immediately. That's the goal here. Okay, we're going to start with number 1, and this is the one that 99% of learners skip. And actually, not just skip, a lot of them just don't even know it. Okay, so first off, let's cover the principles map. What are we looking at here? Okay, well, P1 obviously is at the base, principle 1. P2 through 7 stack above it. P1 is absolutely essential, and then everything on from that point is kind of, I would say, almost even, but we'll get into this in a second, okay? But if you skip the base here, if you skip number 1, then the whole thing collapses. So we have to make sure we get the base right. But if you have all 7 firing, then this is going to be fluency. And the math, when you add these all up together, doesn't care if you're motivated. My point is, you don't need to be the kind of person that shows up every single day super, super excited. You can just be the person that shows up and applies these 7 principles, and you're going to make the same amount of progress as the other guy. All right, so let's look a little bit at what they are. I'll get my big head out of the way here, okay? So the first thing that you can see at the very bottom, which is the most important piece, like I mentioned, principle number 1, is, of course, and I'm just going to change over my handy dandy tool here, most important thing here is attention. Now, the reason why is because if you have something on in the background, right? If you have some sort of show on in the background and you're paying no attention to it, then none of this other stuff matters, okay? Like, for example, if it's comprehensible input, it doesn't really matter because you're not paying attention. Same thing, finishing sessions, brain filling in the gaps, none of this stuff matters. And we're gonna go through all of this here in a second. But the point is, if you are not paying attention right here, then none of this is going to be helpful for you. So all 6 rest on P1. If you skip it, the stack collapses. But if you understand all 7, then any language, doesn't matter what language you're studying, is going to be within reach, guys. Okay, so P1, let's go principle by principle and really break these down, okay? The first thing that you need to understand, and I made a video about this just recently. In fact, my last video was primarily about this. So if you haven't seen and want more information on this, please watch this last video. Okay, so the main issue is you're failing at attention, not language. The skill isn't finding content, it's resisting the urge to find more. When you see all these little thumbnails on your screen, like I've drawn out before, right? You see all these like pretty little thumbnails and you're like, wow, what is that video about? What might that teach me? Right? You see all these different like little drawings on it, a little happy face. Oh, I don't know what that is. Oh, look at this, right? When you have all this stuff, it's very tempting to click on this one or click on this one. But really what you need to do is you need to stick with the video that you're watching because you are basically building up context. So what I'm saying is the first beginning of the video, the first 5, 10, 15, or 18 minutes, if you see my other video, you're going to get that reference. 18 minutes, you're building up context of what's to come. Then everything that builds on top of that 18 minutes can actually be more comprehensible to you simply because you've already invested the time to understand what the video is about. So the more you watch, in theory, the more context that you're going to basically yield. Okay, so the skill isn't finding content, it's resisting the urge to find more. Put your phone in another room, noise-canceling headphones on, a single video. Don't be clicking around several different videos hoping that the next one's going to be better than the one you're watching. In the last video I made, I go over the 4 kinds of videos that you shouldn't be watching, but anything other than that, you should be watching for your comprehensible input. Okay, so action. The first thing that you can do here, okay, is 1 video, finished. No scrolling, do this tomorrow, okay? Not in a week, do this tomorrow. This is what's going to help you really make progress quickly is if you take action. I've actually heard someone say this once, and this is not my saying, but honestly, I love it. Basically, it's the person that can minimize the amount of time between a good decision and taking action is a superhero. That's the real superpower, is minimizing the decision. I'll draw this out, right? Minimizing the decision between Here, you have a good idea, and here you take action, okay? Now, there's obviously time between these two. The person that can turn this into the smallest amount of time, this arrow, making it as small as possible, that is what a real superpower is. So if you can hear this idea, hear this first principle, like I said, that everything relies upon, and you agree with it and you realize that this is actually the way forward, then take action on this as soon as possible, meaning tomorrow or today, honestly, if you want even brownie points. Okay, principle number 2, comprehensible input is the engine. Is comprehensible input literally everything? No, of course you need to output if you want to speak better. You might honestly need to study certain vocabulary if it's hard to come by in your comprehensible input and you want to be able to use it. However, comprehensible input is the engine of what you're building here. So acquisition from understanding, not from drilling. Drop the app, open the show, start the clock. Now, I'm very big on all three of these things, right? Now, again, I'm not going to point fingers at any one particular app. This is not the biggest deal, but really what you do need to do is open the show that you want to watch and start the clock. This word right here is very important because if you track your time, what gets measured gets accomplished. You might think you're doing hours upon hours upon hours, but really you may have only done 30 minutes. And because it was maybe arduous or maybe challenging, you overestimate the amount of time you've spent, but you want to actually start the clock. Okay. Oh, skip 2 points, but we'll go 2 and 1, whatever. Okay, 30 to 50% comprehension is enough. The brain does the rest. Now, of course, if you're just getting started, it's literally your first day or two learning a language, then maybe aim for comprehension that's a little bit higher, right? Like an 80 or a 90% just to get your foot in the door. But it's my personal belief that once you get to a certain point, right, you see these two words, comprehensible input, it gets to a point where actually the importance of these two words kind of switches. And what becomes more important is that you have a whole lot of input, and then afterward is that it's comprehensible. Why is that? Is because it becomes increasingly difficult to determine what is actually comprehensible or what is kind of at this beautiful 70% range for you. It becomes very, very hard. So in my opinion, it's easier to just shotgun approach and watch a whole bunch of stuff, and something in there is going to be comprehensible around the 70% for you, okay? So we'll keep going here. Your one action here for principle 2 is finish one episode in your target language today. Very similar to the first principle's action, but the point is you actually want to find something that you like to watch, something that's comprehensible if you can, right? And finish it today. All right, principle number 3. Finish sessions over hours watched. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier in terms of putting a little bit of a different spin on things that you may have heard before. So make sure you listen carefully to understand what I'm saying, because this one is easy to misunderstand. Okay, so stop counting hours, count videos finished. An interrupted session leaves cognitive tabs open. Sleep can't close them. So let me just talk about these 2 points real quick. When I say stop counting hours, this kind of seems like it flies in the face of what I just said with respect to like racking up the hours. What I mean to say here is that if you're just letting the stopwatch run, but again, your kind of attention is scattered, like that first principle we talked about that everything's built upon, if your attention is scattered, then it doesn't matter that the stopwatch is running. You're not actually finishing videos. You're not really finishing what you start. You're not showing up, paying attention, and actually doing the comprehensible input. In theory, you might have comprehensible input on in the background, but that doesn't actually count in terms of the real input that you've done. Yes, the hours on the stopwatch might indicate that you sat there for an hour, but that doesn't mean you actually did the work. And only you can be honest with yourself and not cheat yourself out of doing the work. So the reason I say count videos finished is because if you can sit for a whole video and actually finish it, and you're sitting still, you're not scrolling, that's the main example that I'm going to use, because let's be honest, that's the main distraction for most people, is scrolling and notifications and these sorts of things. If you really sit down and beginning to end actually finish a video that you're doing, then that's going to gain you way more results than if you're just counting the hours. Again, provided that you're actually paying attention to the videos. Okay, so an interrupted session leaves cognitive tabs open. Sleep can't close them. The point is again, you're leaving context on the table if you watch half of a video. Yes, you might still gain some benefit. I'm not saying that watching half a video or even a part of a video isn't of benefit. It is of benefit, but really the point that I'm trying to get at here is that if you don't finish the video, like I said, you're leaving context on the table, which might color the whole video or the whole conversation or podcast or whatever that you're watching with valuable additions that can then make the whole thing more comprehensible to you, okay? I just did 2 again. Oops, we'll just roll with it. Okay. Even a 5-minute session finished beats 15-minute scroll. So again, if you're paying attention for those 5 minutes, that's better than a quarter paying attention while you're scrolling on your phone. So action here, okay? One short video watched to the end and then app closed. Don't be on any sort of apps right now. Again, if the goal is understanding a language, these are the principles for being able to understand any language. Can apps help? Yes. But in my opinion, they're not in the 7 most important pillars. Okay? So finish sessions over hours watched is the 3rd pillar. 4th pillar, your brain fills in the gaps like Tetris blocks. So language is just repeatable patterns. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. Here's an industry lie for you, okay? So many people in the language learning industry, especially big companies, will push this idea that you should memorize grammar rules, okay? But the truth here is actually you just pattern match from exposure. If you memorize a grammar rule, it's kind of like, and I use this example all the time, okay? If you watch my videos a lot, you'll know and you'll be super familiar with this example. But it's kind of like you try to learn to, let's say, you know what? I'm a terrible artist, so this is not gonna look good. So I'll try and draw a bike, which I always try and draw and always mess it up, okay? You got its two wheels, okay? Anyway, I guess these are its handlebars, as always. This looks terrible. And we'll just put the seat right here, I guess. And here's like a guy on it. I don't know. Okay, here's a guy on our bike, I guess. Now, one way you can learn to ride a bike is by getting on the bike and continuing to basically notice patterns. Okay, so if you lean too far to the right, you fall over. If you lean too far to the left, you fall over. Too far to the front, you might fall over the back. Or, nope, you're not gonna fall over the back, you fall over the front. Anyway, you see what I'm saying? The alternative, right, is by trying to memorize grammar rules. So in this case, in this analogy, it would basically be by opening this massive book, and in here is a bunch of stuff that's written about physics, okay? Now, it's kind of like trying to learn how to ride a bike while reading about physics. In theory, everything about riding a bike might be in this massive physics textbook, but that's not going to actually help you do it. You might memorize the rules for how gravity works and so on and so forth, but you're not actually learning from pattern match exposure or pattern matching exposure, let's say. That's what's really going to get you to be able to do the thing, because language learning is a lot more like a skill, like a physical education skill, than it is like reading about history or something like that, okay? So this is a huge industry lie. But the way the whole Tetris analogy works is really if you basically give yourself the exposure to allow yourself to basically watch this happen, okay? So we're seeing a bunch of Tetris blocks falling from the floor. All right, we'll just draw these out. What's another Tetris block? I guess we kind of got the T one, right? And these are all kind of falling from the floor this way. Well, what's going to happen is eventually, all the way over here, you're going to begin to see stuff like this, where now patterns are kind of beginning to emerge. And so as this guy is falling here, let's say this one, this long skinny one that would fit in right here. As this one is falling, you can anticipate that this is going to go right here. And this is just because you have enough of this stuff on the floor, you have enough of this stuff already populated there, that when you see this one coming, you can already guess and understand the way this is going to land. It's kind of like me saying, it's probably going to rain outside, so I should bring a blank with me. You can fill in your brain and in your mind that I'm probably talking about, right, this is the worst thing ever drawn, I'm probably talking about a palm tree or a jellyfish. No, just kidding. I'm talking about an umbrella, obviously, right? Hideous umbrella, but whatever, you get the point. And you're able to fill that in because you've seen this pattern so many times that when we talk about rain outside and bringing something with us, your brain just knows, oh, it's likely an umbrella, okay? The same thing begins to happen with the language. So again, your brain fills in the gaps just like Tetris blocks. You just need enough Tetris blocks already kind of on the board or on the thing, whatever, for you to begin to be able to fill in the idea of what's going to fall into place next. And you begin to recognize how to put what into what place. So again, I want to emphasize 30 to 50% in is fine, especially once you're in kind of like intermediate sort of area. I don't know what level you are. Once you're like intermediate-ish, 30 to 50% comprehension is fine. And over time, you're going to get 100% out. So over time, you are going to get to a point where all of the stuff that you're hearing, you can comprehend if you stick with it, of course. Okay? So action here. When you don't understand a word, don't look it up, just keep watching. And actually, I don't want to tell you how to live your life, to be super clear. If you want to look it up, please go ahead and look it up. But you don't need to. Over time, you can just keep watching and it's going to get there. Again, this isn't necessarily the fastest way of doing things. If you want to be super, super fast, maybe what you do want to do is look it up and spend a whole bunch of time drilling this word in something like Anki or a flashcard system or whatever. You can do that too. But the reality is, if you recognize that your pattern recognition machine really exists between your ears, then eventually you're going to figure it out, okay? So just to be super clear as to how your brain fits things in, look, you have these two words either side of where you're guessing. Right? These two words. And what happens is your brain is going to fill this word in here. And that's what's going to happen as a result of 30 to 50% comprehension over time. Just exposing yourself to that kind of stuff is 100%. Eventually, 100% will understand this pattern. Okay? So again, emphasize the industry lie is memorize grammar rules, but the truth actually is this guy right here, is that you pattern match from exposure. So what you do need is a lot of exposure, and then you will eventually understand what you're hearing. It's almost like magic. It feels incredible. Okay? So principle number 5, or pillar number 5, the listening ceiling becomes your speaking floor. Now, again, the point of this presentation is to talk about really how we can get to understand any language, but this does talk a little bit about speaking. Obviously, you can see in the title, right? So just to understand, you will never speak at a higher level than you've listened. That's never going to happen. This goes back to what we were talking about before when I kind of mentioned you're not going to produce anything in your, like coming out of your mouth that you haven't already put into your brain. And you can put it in through a variety of ways, but really we're focusing obviously on comprehensible input on, at least on my channel and in this video. So the point is, Don't expect that one day you're going to say something that's at a higher level than what you've heard. You need to listen at a level that you want your speaking level to eventually be at. Now, this seems super straightforward, but this is something that even I've overlooked in times. And it just takes time to really recognize that. And when you understand that, you can then be motivated to push yourself to listen to increasingly difficult. The industry lie is speak from day one, but the truth is premature speaking calcifies bad habits. Now, I know people really hate this, right? There's been a lot of people talking about this idea of fossilization and calcification, all this stuff. You might have different opinions on this. And I'm just speaking from my experience. Now, I will say that, of course, the brain is very flexible. And when you're doing things like comprehensible input, you're having the right patterns drilled into your brain all the time. So even if you speak early and you're making mistakes, most likely your brain is going to hear the right way to do things and it's going to naturally correct itself. But what I've seen in my experience is if I want to speak at the highest possible level in, let's say, 18 months or even 12 months or even 6 months, let's say, I've found that when I've tried to do immersion first and just fill my brain with the right stuff, then naturally the right stuff comes out more easily than if I don't have much to kind of draw from. I don't want to get into the science left or right as to whether or not we should speak or not speak. My personal opinion is that I've seen not speaking work. Maybe speaking will work for you, and I'm not totally sure. I'm not totally sure which one is going to be the absolute fastest because we have to consider things like what your effort level is, how much time you're actually going to put in, do you have any outside sources regularly helping you, these sorts of things. But what I can tell you is if you're the kind of person who's studying by themselves, maybe you have a tutor you see once a week from italki or something like that, what I can tell you is an absolutely safe way to go if you want to go this way is instead of speaking from day one, just wait until your brain actually has things that it can pull from when it wants to express ideas, rather than kind of just making sounds that even your ears aren't too sure what's coming out of your mouth. It might not be of much benefit to you, but if you enjoy that, I will also say, there's always the caveat that if you enjoy that, then go ahead and do it, right? No one in the language learning industry should be here to tell you how to live your life. And so if that's what you want to do, go for it. However, it's my personal opinion that if you do want to understand the language and really get to a point where you understand a lot of it, then you need to spend more time listening to it than you do speaking it. Of course, another video will come out when we want to talk about how to speak at the highest level possible. But this video obviously is how to understand what you're hearing at the highest level possible. Okay, so every minute of silent listening raises the ceiling. So like I mentioned before, right, you're never going to speak at a higher level than this. So if this is what you can understand, and obviously the scale goes this way, okay? If this is the level you can understand, then your speaking level is only at very, 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 very best going to be, let's use a different color, is only ever going to be here. It's only ever going to be at the same level, although I doubt it'll ever actually be at the same level. It's always going to be somewhere like this, right? Quite a bit lower. Now, let's say the absolute bottom is down here, right? It might be like this, where it's like, hey, your listening level is pretty high, your speaking level is a little bit lower, and you've come, a certain distance since you absolutely started. Now, if you want to raise this level, the thing is, right, is that this basically speaking level, for some reason, I can't fully explain it to you, but for some reason, these two levels here, oops, you know what? Get rid of that. This is hideous too. Okay. Anyway, point is, these two levels here are magnetized in some way, where for whatever reason, whenever you target this one and you push it upwards, what happens is it kind of drags this one up too. Again, like I said, I don't really know how to explain it, but the point is when your listening level gets a little bit higher, your propensity and your ability to speak at a higher level is also with it. Now, maybe that's because the more times you hear something and it's reinforced in your brain, what's going to happen is that you're just more prone to using it because it's more readily available. You're going through this process of like translating things, excuse the pun, translating things and converting things from passive knowledge to really active knowledge because you've heard it so many times that it's just on the tip of your tongue. Maybe some of you will be aware of this kind of phenomenon where when you're talking to someone who uses certain words or certain vocabulary, other people in the room, including yourself, again, are more likely to use that vocabulary as well. It's kind of like when you're trying to say something and someone finishes your sentence, and you may have actually been going to say the word that they ended up saying, but because they finished your sentence, you absolutely say the same word. And so you use the same word, and it just seems like, okay, because you heard it, it's at the tip of your tongue, you just use it. The same thing happens when you're listening to the language where your speaking ability, or at least in theory, your speaking ability will improve because of your listening ability. Now, of course, there are certain caveats where if you've never opened your mouth and said anything, then your speaking ability is still going to be quite low, even if you listened to podcasts your entire life, right? Still going to be quite low. You do need to rehearse the actual and practice and build the skill of outputting, but your ability to output, once at least you've started, will increase as a result of your listening ability. And I've seen that time and time again. Okay. Now, there's probably going to be someone out there who says, okay, well, what if, you only had one conversation and then after that, just to kind of, spark the fire. And then after that, all you do is listen to, podcasts infinitely. Is it the case that your speaking ability is going to be better than someone who practices speaking all the time? That's not necessarily what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is that your speaking ability will always be limited by your listening ability, okay? It's not to say necessarily that, like, if you just listen, your speaking ability is going to be way better than someone who speaks all the time. But what I am saying is that person who speaks at a super high level, their ability to output will never exceed the stuff that they already understand and have already heard, okay? And hopefully that should be clear. Skipped one again. Okay, so again, your action here for principle number 5 is 30 days of silent listening, then try speaking, okay? So again, a little bit of a representation here. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but the point is that your listening ceiling, as I just said, is always going to determine your speaking floor. Go ahead and pause this if you want to take a look and have a visual representation, but I think we just went over it pretty well on that last slide. Okay, so principle number 6, data, not feelings. This is like what I said earlier, this idea of what gets measured gets accomplished. So it's important to measure your progress, not just say, oh, I think I did an hour today. Well, did your stopwatch say you did an hour today, or did it not? Did the amount of videos that you finish actually amount to however long it was supposed to be, or did it not? Okay, so your feelings about progress lie. The numbers don't. This happens to me all the time. I'll be completely honest. Even in my position, someone who studied languages now for a long time and worked with a lot of people who have as well, sometimes I can feel like I'm worse than I am or I'm better than I am. It can go either way. But when I look at my actual data of how much time have I done this and done that and whatever, and granted, I haven't actually tracked everything, which is unfortunate, but the point is once you really understand that the numbers tell the story, then you're going to focus more on really banking those high quality numbers rather than being like, oh, I'm not good enough, that sucks, or getting overly confident and be like, oh, I'm amazing, and you're not actually as good as you wish you were. So the numbers don't lie, okay? Every hour is a vote for the version of you that's fluent. So let's be very clear. Every hour you put in clearly expresses what your goals are. If you find a reason to not do it, then guess what? Your language abilities don't care. It may have been a great reason, but your language abilities only care about how much time you did put in, not how many reasons you found to not put the time in. So track your hours, videos finished, and days streak. Do this sorts of thing, right? This is all valuable data. You might not want to track every single hour, like I mentioned earlier, but you could track videos finished just by using your YouTube account or Netflix account or whatever. Day streaks is also awesome, right? How many days did I show up and do 20 minutes of immersion? How many days in a row could I do that? You could even have a New Year's resolution or whatever, some sort of resolution where the goal is I will not miss a single day for this whole year of language learning. It might only be 10 minutes a day. And if that's the case, then great. That's still a streak. That's still some quantitative data that you can track, which is helpful. Okay, so action here is open the Notes app, log today's input minutes. That's what I recommend. You don't need to make this difficult. You only can just open the app on your phone or computer, whatever you're currently watching me on right now. Open that and track your time. It's very motivational. And at times when, you might feel a little bit overconfident and you start to take your foot off the gas pedal, you look at that and realize, oh, I haven't actually hit this round number goal that I have, which might be, I want to get to 100 hours or 1,000 hours or 10,000 hours, whatever it is. If you haven't hit it yet, then keep going. And then finally, principle number 7, interest over level. So if you wouldn't watch it in English, don't watch it in your target language. Now, there is a caveat here, whereas for me personally, right, I actually watch a bunch of stuff in, for example, Mandarin, or when I was studying Japanese, I'd watch a bunch of stuff that I wouldn't naturally watch in English, but I was so interested in language learning and the process of comprehensible input itself that I was cool watching anything. I wasn't suffering. It was totally fine. But for some people, they find the content they're trying to watch, like especially content made for language learners, so dull and dry and boring that it turns them off language learning altogether. If that's the case and the only thing you have is something that might be a little bit higher than your level, but it actually interests you, I would take the interest over the fact that it's not at my level 100 times out of 100. And that's what I recommend you do as well. Because at the end of the day, if you don't enjoy this at all, what are you even doing this for? Okay. Next is interest sustains the daily reps. Level graded content kills them. So this is with the caveat that if you enjoy level graded content, of course, it's going to be beneficial to you. And I happen to like that kind of stuff. But really what's going to help the daily reps is, of course, this guy right here. It's interest. If you have interest in it, that's what's going to get you to come back. And at the end of the day, I've said this a million times, but the perfect system, or I should say, the mediocre system that you do is infinitely better than the perfect system that you don't. In a perfect world, we all spent 10 hours a day studying a language and we got fluent by the end of the week, right? Or whatever. That's in a perfect world. But can anybody actually sustain 10 hours a day? It's unlikely. Not many people can. And I can tell you that because I've done my best to sustain a high amount and even I fall off, right? So look, the real point here is if you can find something that interests you, if you can find something that interests you, like right here, that's what's, not even sharing my screen. That is what's going to really get you to stick to the system, which is what gets you fluent in the end, sticking to the system, no matter what system it is at the end of the day. Okay, so the mediocre strategy you do beats the perfect strategy you don't, like I just said. So the action for this one is find the target language version of a creator you actually love in English. And that's a really good shout out, honestly. I'm happy I put this in here. Um, if you don't know what to watch, what do you like to watch in English? Put it into Google Translate or put it into something like a Chat GPT or a Perplexity and literally describe, hey, here's what I like to watch in English. What channels out there on various platforms? Might there be a creator that's similar to this kind of content? And who knows, you might just find the next Mr. Beast or whatever that you really like in your target language. And when you do, it's super rewarding. Okay, so now let's talk about how these 7 compound. You know what they are, but how do they actually work together? Okay, skip one principle and the rest collapse. Primarily the first one. Okay, the 7 compound across days, weeks, and months. This is something that cannot be overstated. Especially this one right here. This is not the kind of thing that you do for an hour and you're like, oh, I applied the 7 principles and I can't speak the language. Why not? Look, the reality is you have to do this over days, weeks, and months. Some people can do it super, super quick, but let's just bank on the idea that we're not. If you do happen to be one of these crazy savants that learn in by the end of the week, that's fantastic. But let's just assume that we're not, okay? So this isn't motivation. Something else I want, some other kind of like bit of motivation I want to give you, a bit of encouragement. This isn't motivation. This isn't about, okay, I got to be motivated. No, no. The reality is this is an equation. At the end of the equation, you get the answer. And the answer is, in your case, if this is your goal, conversational fluency, or the ability to at least go back and forth with a native speaker or non-native speaker and have a real conversation, really learn things, really share things, etc. Okay, so again, here is kind of the whole pyramid as it goes together. Again, maybe a little bit misleading because really the only bottleneck, like I mentioned, is this one right here. Because if you're not paying attention, the comprehensible input doesn't matter, finishing sessions doesn't matter, none of this matters. You have to be paying attention. And this is the one that so many people overlook because they say comprehensible input, and that's great. But if it's on in the background and you're not paying attention, that doesn't mean you're actually going to pick it up, okay? So again, attention is the bottleneck. I'll get my head out of the way so you can see it, but there's nothing really much over here to see anyway. Yeah, so basically all of these are the way it goes together. And like I mentioned at the very beginning, okay, all 7 firing will be fluency. Math doesn't care if you're motivated. So if you're the kind of person that is a math person or a numbers person, then look, this should be very, very motivating to you. And if you're not the kind of person that's a math person or whatever, well, good news. You don't actually have to do the math. Just track your numbers and it'll show you the math for you. It'll basically just show, hey, you did 1,000 hours. Awesome. You should be roughly about this point. Now, there is some slight elements that could be probably mentioned in this conversation, which is, like I mentioned before, an hour is not actually an hour. Someone who's really, really paying attention, let's say, right? Someone who's really paying attention is going to make way more progress in that hour than someone who even spends 2 or 3 hours, but they're not really paying attention. So there is that element, but I really just want to mention, this is the way this all goes together. If you skip one, the rest collapse, primarily this one, right? But all 7 firing, you get to fluency. And this does, like I mentioned, compound over months and years. So work with me if you'd like to. You now have the 7 principles. Most people will close this video and not do anything, right? Most people will just kind of watch this. And I know this from the analytics. Most people will watch this and they might not even watch all the way, but those of you that do and then actually take action on this video are the ones who really, really care about getting these results that I like to talk about on this channel, okay? If you want help installing them, any of these pillars and principles that you heard today, shows that are curated, minutes, the way I track them, accountability, all this kind of stuff, really, really easy. There's a link below. Go ahead and click it and see if working with me is for you. Okay, but either way, one thing I want to encourage you to do is keep the momentum. You're watching this video now, but now it's time to go and apply at least one of these pillars. If you do want to do yourself a favor, apply the attention pillar. Really try and focus your attention, right? But yes, either way, keep the momentum, watch the videos, keep up with comprehensible input. Don't give up. I know it can feel slow sometimes, but let me remind you that your progress and your perception of your progress are 2 different things, okay? So again, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I know it may have been a little bit of a longer one. Lately, I'm out of focus there. Lately, I've kind of just been enjoying doing these kind of videos where I really walk through some of the nitty-gritty of the language learning because I found that even though I know not everybody can sit through these videos, it can be kind of dense. The people that do, who send me emails or leave comments or whatever, I can tell how much it's helping them, and that's really what's exciting. So again, if you like this, let me know. If there's anything you want me to cover, I get a lot of my topics of what I cover in my videos nowadays, mostly from the comment section and mostly from people who email me directly. So if you have anything you want to see, please let me know in the comment section, and I might just make a video about that next. So thank you so much. Like I said, always appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next one.